So I just put out a new post on my blog called The Contrition. And this video is just going to be a little bit of extra short commentary, kind of like DVD bonus footage. A few things that remark not only on this particular post, but on the story as a whole so far. So I hope you read the post first, and you'll have a little more context watching this. But I think you'll see if you read it that it should be very clear by now that both Chris Lipe and Jennifer Clinchy are much, much worse human beings than I am. That I have done the moral and right thing, told the truth every step of the way in the story, and they have just been absolutely horrible people. And it's funny to me that there's a number of things that were written on the blog much earlier that I feel like have only sort of resonated more as more of the story has gotten out there. And one of them is actually the epigraph that was on one of the first posts, the second post that was ever on the blog back in July 2020. What I wrote there was, people have to pretend you're a bad person so they don't feel guilty about the things they did to you. And I feel like that's so much one of the overarching themes of this story, is that people have just absolutely gone out of their way to write and maintain these false stories about me being a horrible person, when really it's because they're terrible people who did terrible things to me, and they have to hide from that truth. They have to invert reality to not make themselves the bad guys. And something else that's kind of related to that is this passage that was actually a screenshot that I got from a WESPA committee source that included this email that WESPA was temporarily withholding from me. And I'll tell you now that that WESPA committee source was Eric Kinderman. So Eric actually wrote in this screenshot, it was a Facebook message to me, "Fucking cancel culture, you've been canceled, infuriating." And I wrote back to him, "I've done nothing wrong, and the people who canceled me broke the law. That's what bothers me. Not that people hate me for non-existent reasons, but that the people who made it happen are so much worse human beings than I am." But I want to tell you also that this whole thing I've seen of people being tribal, people deciding certain people are on their side and are the good guys, other people they dislike and are the bad guys, and then just rejecting any evidence, any argument that shows that they're actually supporting the wrong side, is endemic not just to this story, but to our political moment as a whole right now. It's exactly what you see with Trumpism. And many other political movements like it around the world. There are so many people who have inverted reality, who actually are literally supporting evil and opposing good because they've already made a decision about which side they're on, and they're only going to picture it as their side being the good guys and the other side being the bad guys, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. And I think this is an enormous problem in this world that needs to be fixed. And a big part of the secret to fixing it is learning how to tear down all that incorrect scaffolding in your head. Is that there's a whole lot of ways in which we learn particular things. We build particular assumptions and preconceptions about situations, about who is good and bad, who is right and wrong, who we like and dislike. And for most people, that unlearning is a really, really difficult process. And I do think that this is something that is familiar to a lot of Scrabble players, is that when we study the words, it's often the case that there are new additions to the word list, that you might know a particular rack that has 3 words in it, and now there are 4, and you have to learn an extra word. That is much, much easier to learn than to learn when that 3 words in that rack, one of them is now unacceptable, when there's a deletion. You have that word programmed in your head, and to erase it from your memory, to delete it, to unlearn that this is something I'm allowed to play, is actually a much more difficult task. But this is the thing, and I'm going to say something that may sound a little self-serving and egotistical, and there is maybe a little bit of truth to that, but I'll say it's not just about me. It's about software developers in general. I think there are a lot of people who are really good software developers, who are good at this profession, who are very good at tearing down this incorrect scaffolding in their heads and in rebuilding new scaffolding that is more in line with reality. And a big part of the reason for that is that that's exactly what software developers do when they're debugging software. When you're a software developer, you create pieces of code that are instructions to the computer that are based on a particular mental model you have of what you need to do to solve a problem, to achieve a particular goal. And when the program doesn't work right and you need to debug it, a big part of that is figuring out, testing and using and looking at that code, what is different between the model of how the software actually does work and the mental model in your head of what you think it is doing. And what good software developers have to recognize is that whenever there's a discrepancy there, the machine is more objective than they are. And they have to fully admit their own wrongness. And there's often a lot of ego at stake here because people created the software. It's their baby. It's something they're proud of. And they want to believe that they're good programmers and they did things the right way. But part of becoming a good software developer, or a great software developer, I'd say, is putting that ego aside and recognizing that the truth is more important than your feelings. And recognizing what is the truth, and then completely scrapping all the stuff in your head that was wrong and rebuilding it anew to stuff that is actually right, that is actually true, that's actually aligned with reality. And that's true of software developers, but I also want to say that, like, I think it's true of a lot of people who play objective games like Scrabble. And that's part of what's kind of interesting about this whole story, is that Scrabble is a game that is highly objective, and playing it the best is about being a very, very objective thinker. And to me, it's funny because I feel like I'm dealing with all these people who are living in this world of emotions, who need to hear some sort of apology from me to assuage their emotions, whereas I'm not willing to give it to them. I want to stay in the world of objectivity. But it's exactly because I am so oriented toward objectivity that I am one of the best Scrabble players in the world. And I know I've talked to many other top Scrabble players who see my side, who don't think I should be banned from Scrabble, who still are friends with me and staying connected with me through all of this, and who want to be able to play me in tournaments. And I think one of the big problems is that we have way too many people in our Scrabble leadership who are not the best players, who are not as objective thinkers, who are living in this world of emotions, and they are trying to control me, and they are hijacking Scrabble from me. I have more of a right to this game than they do, because I'm better at the game, I'm a better objective thinker, and my values are aligned with the values of what you need to excel at this game. Something else, too, I wanted to talk about here, which is this book, actually, right over here, The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. It's a cool book that I've liked for a long time about management consulting, and particularly what Peter Senge calls systems thinking. And one of the things it talks about is that oftentimes when there are problems in organizations, it's the case that there's systemic problems that happen because people in a particular department or area are doing something wrong that causes some damage to the system, to the organization as a whole, or to other parts of it. But the problem is that the damage they do, they don't perceive. It's happening somewhere else in the organization. A different department is feeling the pain or effects of it. And one of the things that Peter Senge really details in this kind of systems thinking is that often the key to fixing these problems in the organizations is to create feedback loops so that the people who are making the mistakes that are causing the pain and damage, that loops back to them. So they start feeling the pain of the wrong things they are doing, and then they are incentivized to actually fix their behavior and start doing things right. And I feel like I have really taken this message to heart and used these kinds of methods, both when I was working in large organizations, but also within this whole Scrabble community and its organizations. I feel like there are enormous ways in which so much of the wrongdoing to me of this campaign to get me removed from Scrabble was happening when I was completely removed from everyone's field of vision. A lot of this happened during pandemic, when there were no tournaments, or tournaments were very sparse starting up again after that, and people hadn't seen me for a very long time. And they were living totally in their own emotional worlds with the Clinchies and some of their allies, and with all these political battles between WIGPO, COCO, WESPA, and, well, not so much WESPA, WIGPO, COCO, and NASPA. And I do think that what was important to them, what they were maximizing for, were these political fights that they were having, were standing up for these things that they thought were virtuous, based on a very incomplete understanding, and in particular, no insight into how they totally had me pegged wrong, and they were doing things that were causing enormous damage to my life. And what I did by writing this blog, and then eventually by creating a whole bunch of these videos, was to create a window so they could see the damage they were causing to me. They could see how wrong their actions were, how much pain, how much trauma, how much literal PTSD it was causing. And I was hoping that in creating that feedback mechanism, people would see it and start doing the right thing. But what's really disappointed me is that there are so many people who have taken me presenting the feedback to them, me presenting the window to show how badly they've behaved, to show how much damage they are doing, as an attack on them. They've taken it as, I refuse to see or accept that I was making these mistakes, that I treated you so wrong. I refuse to go back and fix that and atone and repair and do that. I'm going to make you the bad guy. I'm going to hate you and dehumanize you more so that I don't feel bad about what I did to you. And that, again, people have to pretend you're a bad person so they don't feel guilty about the things they did to you. I must say, like, I get it. I've seen the same thing with my mother. I saw how there was a long, long time where she had a wrong view of things and had done things that were very painful and aggravating of trauma to me, and I didn't say anything about it. And when I finally, much, much later on, started talking, started opening that window, started getting her to see what she was doing wrong and how much damage it had caused, it just got her to break from reality. And that's the thing, is I think if you take the side of the evil people, of the people who are in the wrong, of the people who are just completely unobjective or completely nefarious and deceiving and all this, that trying to maintain that stance will make you dumber. It will get you more and more disconnected from reality. And really, objectivity is the only path that we have to get back on a good course, to do things the right way. And I hoped, and what I still hope for, is that people will take accountability for what they did to me. Will admit it. Will make peace with me. Will approach me and apologize and try to fix this. And make some public statements restoring some of the damage that they did to my reputation. I don't think that's too much to ask. But one last thing I want to say here, which is that one of the real morals I feel like I've learned from the story, I feel like I went into this a lot in the early years with very much of an attitude of being the bigger man and not saying anything while other people were gossiping about me and just not worrying about what people thought. But I've learned that being the bigger man and not saying anything while people are gossiping lets the narcissists control the narrative. And I think it is actually really important sometimes to step up, make yourself loud, make yourself heard, and to counter the narrative of the narcissists. The fact that we have a sort of bad reputation about gossiping, about talking about the stuff that we're not supposed to talk about, and so many people in Scrabble think it was like distasteful that I talked about all these people's private lives and revealed this stuff. But the thing is, they were doing it first. They didn't do it on a public blog, but they were gossiping behind the scenes about all these things about our private lives and causing this massive sentiment of ill will against me that was causing me massive damage. And it got to a point as bad as it was in a lot of ways because I didn't fight back, because I was the bigger man, because I never contested that narrative. And I only started contesting that narrative when things had already blown up in a really bad way. When Jennifer and Evans had already created the separate Coco organization and were undermining NASPA and doing all sorts of dirty things in politics, were already cheating in their registration systems of tournaments. And even then I only spoke up in a limited way. And then it was this all-out attack to destroy my life, drive me out of Scrabble, and that's when I started talking out for the second time. So this is the thing. Every way that I've spoken up, every way that I've been an asshole and made you all uncomfortable was completely the right thing to do and the necessary thing to do. These people showed that if I don't step up and redirect the narrative away from the lies they're telling, they're only going to keep escalating and making my life worse and infringing on it to a greater and greater degree.